Welcome everyone to podcast number 7, and for this podcast we're going to do something a little different. So we're switching away from books and TV shows and movies and going to talk about video games now, specifically the high fantasy MMORPG World of Warcraft, which is a very exciting video game for both me and Morgan. Dredges up a lot of memories and fun times for us. Yeah, so we're just going to talk a little bit about it and how awesome it is, and also how vexing it is to a lot of the community that plays it right now. And there's millions and millions of them, if you don't know already. But yeah.
Okay, so Shalini comes burning out the gate with this really great introduction, so we'll just ask you the first question. What is World of Warcraft?
Okay, oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
But you're supposed to be the expert, no?
Yeah, well, you know, I think my answers will be a little too erudite and...
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and mine aren't?
Yeah, I want to capitalize on this fun new energy you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is WoW?
Well, you said MMORPG, played
Yes.
by millions of people.
Maybe we should say what MMORPG is for people
Okay.
who are just not versed in
Yeah.
video game.
Yeah, for people who have been living under a
Terms.
rock for the last entirety of
So
their lives.
judgy.
It's massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
Yes.
So it's not only a massively multiplayer game, it also incorporates what is RP? Role-playing game.
Role-playing.
Yeah, see,
Wow.
I forgot what the fuck the
Wow.
acronym means halfway through.
Maybe I should be answering the question.
Yeah, I think you should. So the reason that Shalini and I decided to include WoW in one of our podcasts is because not only do we love the game and the franchise, but there's a ton of mythology here that's very reminiscent of Tolkien. In fact, I would argue that the majority of it is actually directly borrowed from Tolkien. We use the word borrow. There's a lot of early MMORPG games that take a lot from Tolkien's universe. Obviously Warcraft did it, but I think they made it a lot more colorful and arguably a bit more relatable fantasy world for today's very, very nerdy and impatient and extremely entitled audience. Which,
Yeah, constantly demand more. And
WoW fans are notoriously entitled and bitchy and rude, and they expect a lot. And I guess you would expect a lot, because as you did just mentioned, the subscription fees are quite high. I would say though that when I was playing WoW, and this was years, I started when in vanilla actually, so I have a pretty comprehensive purview for the WoW experience overall. I felt like it was definitely worth the money, worth my mom and dad's money.
The entitled players, these
Yeah.
WoW people.
Well, you know, I took some of my communion money and put it towards playing some WoW, but most of it was them, and it was a really generous present, ongoing present, shall we say.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but speaking to your point about the uniqueness of WoW, I think it's because it manages to bring together a bunch of different aspects, such as like there's the gameplay, and then there's the immersion factors, like the actual world itself, like how beautiful it looks when it's rendered, and so the art styles, and then there's also the music, which I think it's one of the most universally acclaimed like online computer game soundtracks out there. I know, like I really like the Elder Scrolls series music, and they have a pretty they're pretty excellent compositions. But like WoWs are just phenomenal, and every single zone that you go into in the game has a different soundtrack, and it just adds so much to the overall experience.
And it's so distinctive too. So once I stopped playing in around 2008, I still, on my iPod Nano, I downloaded the different soundtracks for Teldrassil and even the Graveyard one. I don't know why I did that one. It's super creepy, but I just love the sound of it. And it just took me back to all the times I just ended up killing myself because I like ran into a huge mob or something.
Get killed by a wild boar.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. And back in those days in vanilla, it was hard to get back to your body.
Yeah, and you'd often be killed again because if you were too close to the monsters, you'd respawn and then get killed promptly again. So you had to kind of edge your skeleton back to an area where you can be away from. When I started playing, I was a horde player, so those are my enemies.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was an alliance, or specifically Night Elf for me.
Yeah.
Because that was the race that I resonated with, because I played the real-time strategy games of Warcraft 3 in like my grade school days, so that kind of influenced my take on WoW. So for people who don't know what World of Warcraft and the story of it is, the background or the lore, basically it follows two warring factions on the battlegrounds of Azeroth, which is the planet that this all takes place on. And a lot of the races are borrowed from classical, well, I think all of them are basically from sort of classic mythology or Tolkien-esque mythology.
Yeah, so there's elves, dwarves, and
humans, gnomes.
Gnomes are definitely
Snow White. There's gnomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's some that are kind of new. They're like
orcs.
Well, orcs are
Tolkien-esque, yeah.
Yeah.
Trolls as well. But yeah, there's the undead.
Yes.
I mean, now there's a lot more.
Like the Draenei, I think, are completely like a WoW thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Warcraft.
I can't think of anything in real world mythology that is like that. I think that there's some monsters that are inspired by Hindu mythology. I know there's a couple of demons. Like there's this one demon, I think it's called like the Shivara or something, something like that. It looks like Shiva.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right, Shivara.
With the many arms and that kind of thing.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah, they're in Outland. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And that's what another interesting aspect is, that there's inclusion of a lot of different world mythology. So it's not just Anglo-Saxon or Norse mythology. Like there's even stuff from Greco-Roman mythology, Chinese. There's African mythology, North American, like Indian or indigenous mythology. There's Japanese stuff. There's basically, anywhere you look, you're gonna see it. So now that we've kind of established in a very loose form what WoW is, let's talk about what the themes are, because World of Warcraft is an extremely story-driven, believe it or not, video game series.
Mm-hmm. So some of the things that you can pick up in World of Warcraft is the theme of chaos, and whoa, it's crazy.
Disorder and chaos.
And it kind of stems from the beginning mythology of World of Warcraft. So did a little bit of research on it, because as players you don't really know how all this started, but basically the world was, or the universe, let's say, it was just chaos and disorder, and there was a thing called the Pantheon, and I guess they were all gods and sort of leaders of things.
What a title.
Articulate.
Leader of things.
And then there was one named Sargeras, and he was first a good guy, and then he got so consumed by the fact that the universe was not lending itself to being in order that he himself became evil. And then he created the Burning Legion, which is the probably the biggest antagonist of all the factions of Azeroth, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
The intergalactic demon horde hellbent on destroying all.
Yeah, exactly. Life. So even Horde and Alliance just kind of like forget their differences and try to attack and destroy the Burning Legion, but it keeps coming back, which is a thing that we'll get to again. The process of cyclicity.
Extraordinarily annoying is when you vanquish an enemy and then you realize several expansions later, they didn't really go away. In fact, they're more powerful than ever now.
Oh, look, buddy. Okay, Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne was all about like the Burning Legion, and then you go into WoW and you're like, oh, there's still a thing. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Do the same shit all over again. Yeah, and each of the races has its own lore and history of origin, and it would be way too much to even delve into each of them in this podcast. It would be like even longer than it is already. So we're not going to try and attempt that. But basically, this core concept of chaos is so integral to not only the storyline, but the way that you interact and go about the world in Warcraft. Because even when you do a quest line, it's all about maintaining order and stopping disorder from spreading and things like that. So
how abstract.
but even in a very practical way too, because once you go and talk to someone and get a quest, and then you go and release a prisoner or something, or kill a population that's gone out of control.
These boars are eating all my crops. I want you to kill them and show me their livers. But it turns out only 1 in 8 fucking boars in this fucking zone have livers.
I always think that it's just once you kill them, like it bursts into flames, or they're pierced too much to be recognized as livers. So I guess that was my reasoning, because otherwise you just go crazy.
Yeah. No, I think it was a really, really bad early system with the questing, where the drop rates are so fucking bad. You literally end up killing like 70 boars and realize there's not a whole lot of them that have livers, do they?
Yeah.
Are
well,
there?
At least now the population's gone. Now they killed 70 of them instead of the 7 livers that you needed to get.
That is if you manage to actually get all of them before some other player comes and steals all the fucking kills that you're trying to get.
Yeah, or someone at level 80 is just coming in and little old you in Goldshire and just like offs you for no reason.
Fuck.
It's the worst. Anyway, what was I getting at? Right. Chaos.
Grievances about the game aside, yeah.
Yeah, which we'll get to at some point, I'm sure. Even the game developers, what was that guy's name? Ion, and he has like a very Greek last name. It's like Stenodousis or something. Anyway, he's one of the assholes that everyone hates. Or loves to hate, I guess.
I have no idea what this is.
He's the one with the pale eyes. We'll insert a picture of him here.
I don't know any of these guys.
We watched a video of him anyway. Even he mentioned that you need a certain suspension of belief when you play WoW, because once fantasy element aside, because once you release a prisoner from a cage, the prisoner like reappears in that cage again. And it's kind of like this whole thing of like there's so much chaos and evil and disorder, no matter how many boars you kill, no matter how many people you save, no matter how many achievements you unlock, there's always going to be more and more chaos to kind of rein in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an overlying like narrative and functionality of WoW, which is really interesting.
One of the most important components of the player experience thematically is the Horde versus Alliance conflict, which we've already brought up. But this is the most important theme for the player early on, especially for someone like me who played WoW a long time ago. That was basically all that it was really about. There was, at least seemed to be, there was so much more, I was going to say class identity. There actually was a lot of class identity back then, but there was also a lot of faction loyalty, like hardcore faction loyalty. Like Horde players and Alliance players really didn't like each other.
For the Horde, Alliance sucks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, they're all 12-year-olds and stupid, and we're like the mature kids on the Horde, right? I'm gonna go take my kids out trick-or-treating. Remember one time I was in a guild. I have to tell a story. So I was in a guild. I probably was 13 years old. I'm playing my like orc, whatever the fuck, or some Tauren something or other, some moo cow that casts spells, and I'm in Stranglethorn Vale, and I'm just chilling, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, we're gonna go and do some world PvP, right? Then like, fucking go to, I think it was Goldshire. It was also Hallow's End, and in real life there was Halloween, and I was playing. This is how much of a fucking geek I was. I was playing World of Warcraft instead of Halloween, going to Halloween trick or treating. I was just
party.
I was just neither though. Just in my room, drinking my Coca-Cola or whatever the fuck.
I was probably getting mugged at that time, because I once got mugged by a fellow trick-or-treater on the street. So that was me. At the same time that this is happening to you.
Yeah. Little did I know. I mean, if only I was there, I would have cried and done nothing. I was such a wimp as a kid. No, actually, I don't know. I probably would have. I don't know. I took martial arts as a kid and was actually pretty stern.
Yeah.
But
well, I didn't let my candy go, so it was a happy ending.
Yeah, it was. You stood up for yourself, which is great. But yeah, the guildies turned out to be a couple of parents who had to take their kids out trick or treating. And so I had to basically wait until like midnight, which is way past my bedtime as a, like, I don't know, grade 9 kid or something. 8, 9, whatever it was. So
That's
lots of
adorable.
really quirky player experiences. But yeah, I mean, the faction is like a really important aspect of the story. I know it's a very basic point to make, but as you get further into the game and as you actually get older as a player, you become a lot more understanding of the fact that there's not really a good side or a bad side. It seems like the Alliance is this very benign, all for good, for the light faction, and the Horde is like full of these evil, monster, disorderly races, and you realize that it's not really the case, that both of them are actually disengaged in this struggle for survival, and it's just kind of the endless cycle of one transgression mirrors another, causes another. Something that we've talked about in this podcast many times before, the cycle of violence. So for those of you who are into the real Game of Thrones, mature type fantasy shit where there's killing and pillaging and raping, it's implied that the Horde and Alliance have been doing this for a very long time. And so you get inserted into this story, and you become a mighty hero who tries to navigate this complex, story-driven conflict.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when and where the Horde and Alliance faction war comes up. So that was basically the entire thing in the campaign games of Warcraft. And so it's interesting that the latest expansion is returning back into that faction difference and that war. So I haven't obviously played Battle for Azeroth because I stopped at Burning Crusade. But I watched a video clip of the burning of Teldrassil in that questline, and it was horrific.
Damn.
Like, oh my god, it's Malfurion Stormrage, who is a Night Elf Druid, the leader of them, against Sylvanas Windrunner, who is like an amazingly complex and wonderful character, but she's the war chief of the Horde. And they're like fighting it out, and Darnassus is destroyed. The city is burning. Oh my god. Like, if you've ever been in Darnassus, you know just how peaceful and tranquil it is. And now it's just burning aflame. And
it's a real shame, actually. It's a really nice city, but no one would ever play there. Everyone would just go in Stormwind. Very boring.
Yeah, nothing really happened in Darnassus. But now it's just a flame. And it's one of those things where the game developers want to not just keep a cycle going, but break the cycle and make something different, which they really did with Cataclysm. And then moving from that, just changing the worlds on. And people feel very sad about it because they're so invested in the landscapes. And yeah, I mean, even the video that I watched, the player put a commentary on it saying, like, at this moment I was so emotional and extremely angry and sad, so I had to take a moment. Like, this dude, like, level 110 whatever, dude was just like, I can't do this. He's that invested in Darnassus, and he was playing a human.
Yeah, it's one little aside that we can talk about is the craziness of the WoW community, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. Very entitled and very mean. I think I remember there's this, it's probably still on YouTube, you can go and watch. There was this Australian news segment from like 2005 or something.
What?
But this boy, Cameron, he's addicted to playing the game 12 hours a day, and his mom has no idea what to do. Is this kid this 15-year-old kid who's like totally addicted to WoW.
Yeah. And
he's doing the thing where he's typing away and smashing buttons and swearing and being an ass and doing nothing with his life. And his mom is just like, I don't know what to do.
I love that this is like a news point.
Yeah,
it's a news item.
Yeah, they had cut to like the interview they're having with this psychologist who's saying, video game addiction is not currently defined in the psychologist's Bible or something. I remember seeing at the time, it was just so funny. I'm like, they're treating this like it's an epidemic. Or like this is the next big social issue is people being addicted to World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
People have always taken video games way too far sometimes.
Yeah, take it too seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, on the other hand, there's this whole body of research that goes into trying to prove that World of Warcraft is actually a good force, and it brings people together. And well, back in the day, it forced you to interact.
Blizzard greased some palms here, let's be honest.
It could be, but there was this one research coming from, I think, University of Chicago or Pennsylvania or something.
She's legit.
So, like a big uni. And they were saying how people who play Warcraft are like better people. Increases your ability to work together and communicate and empathize, and maybe the people who are really invested in the story and the landscapes, maybe that might be a thing instead of the people who are gear
obsessed fucking goblins. Sometimes literally goblins, right? Forgot.
That's a new race.
Sorry, that's a new race.
Yeah.
Fucking goblins.
Jesus. Oh, they're so ugly.
Why
did they do that?
How could they?
Yeah. And contrary to popular belief, Pandaren aren't that great either.
Yeah, no, who the fuck? And this, okay, I know we're going way off track here, but fuck it, because we're already halfway into this podcast, probably.
This is what WoW does to everyone.
I know.
Chaos.
You can just, I know, see, right? Because it has that it puts this pattern of thinking and of being, imbues you with it. I remember when this is early uni, and Mists of Pandaria comes out, and I go, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah.
Why? It's the Kung Fu Panda expansion, right? So and I see the trailer, and they're doing martial arts moves, and I go, this is childish.
But you know what's interesting is that they were right in saying that this is part of the Warcraft lore, because in Frozen Throne you can be a Pandaren hero.
But see, technically yes, it's true. But they made it so sappy and dumb.
Yeah.
I hated Pandaria. And even the it's like it feels like you're this little kid. Some of the monsters were really cool and interesting, but
Did you actually play it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
It was garbage. Hated it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, the story is really cool." It's like, really? Like,
no.
You can't really take it seriously once you've seen what the rest of the world is, because it's so incongruent, really. Mm-hmm. That's why goblins seem so like strange as well, because they're so commercial and
it's this cartoony, bizarre thing. Well, that's the thing I think is that they're obviously trying to appeal to a bunch of different demographics, because I was convinced, like, for me, Wrath of the Lich King was, other than Burning Crusade, the best expansion that they had. Because there's a lot of elements that are really dark, lots more mature themes, and the zones felt a lot more dangerous and thrilling to go into, and they were extremely unique. And because they used so many different, new color palettes, a lot more moody. The whole zombie theme.
Yeah, Northrend.
Yeah,
cool.
it was really interesting, and that was actually the first continent that was shall we say, introduced after the vanilla, which was just basically Azeroth, and then Outland is kind of this separate planet, and so it's not really connected to the world of Azeroth. But here you have Azeroth getting bigger.
And also with Wrath of the Lich King gets reintroduced King Arthas, who is probably the best character in all of the Warcraft lore, because
he's really
a wild dude.
Very interesting character. Wow, he goes to Vegas twice a year.
Descends from the frozen throne and grabs his big bag of coins and goes to town.
Interesting. So he's a slots man. He doesn't do craps, blackjack. He doesn't play poker.
I don't think he can take off his gloves.
True. Yeah. I bet he's a very thorny character.
Yeah.
Spiky character. Yeah. He's a little bit. I don't think he'd be that fun to hang out with. A bit of a killjoy.
Yeah, probably. His whole thing about not giving a shit about anyone who's alive and just making sure his legacy endures. Yeah, it's great, dude.
Yeah, it's just zombie, totalitarian, megalomaniacal, narcissistic,
basically
violence. Yeah, great stuff, folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the kids.
This would be a great place to plug this, but if you are interested in WoW lore, we are doing a whole run, well, not a whole run through, but a run through of the Warcraft 3 game, because Morgan has never played it and I've played it many a time. So we're going to capture him playing for the first time so you can see a bit more of the lore of the origins of WoW.
Yeah, it's going to be this really unique and interesting and fresh new concept on YouTube. It's where you record yourself playing a video game and you talk about exactly what you're doing and what the people can see you're doing.
Yeah, it's
going to be super, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure
totally fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you stay tuned for that.
Okay, so now what makes World of Warcraft so capturing, and why don't most players like it anymore? Kind of an oxymoron of a question there. So,
you're welcome.
Yeah, I think we've talked about, we've already kind of got into this question, probably answered it like 80-90%. I mentioned the different facets of the player experience, so the questing and immersion, which are the strongest points of the player experiences for me. One thing that I didn't really do a lot of that I regret now in my old age is doing the RP, because you can do, I mean, theoretically you can play World of Warcraft however you really want to. You could actually play the entire game and not really care about gear or even really questing. You can just play the game and be like a poor farmer or something and pretend that you're I mean, it's really boring if you don't have anybody else who wants to participate. But I did a little bit of the RP, maybe 3 times total. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, this is really interesting. This is a very unexplored part of this game that has a lot of potential because it puts a lot of creativity in the hands of the player. Mm. So here I am kind of like promoting something I've never really done before. But I think for me, if I was to return to World of Warcraft, that's something that I would want to focus on. And so it speaks to that part of the question that you pose, which is why don't most players like it anymore? I think it's just because so much of the immersion has been lost, and it feels more like you're playing kind of this weird completionist like video game where you're kind of racing to the next set of content experiences that are very increasingly watered down and repetitive and extremely predictable. They don't really feel fresh. It's just kind of like putting a new skin on a set of experiences we've had hundreds of times. But the thing is that through this process, they've disincentivized players, in my opinion, to actually get into it. Like, I remember at a certain point, I just stopped reading what the quests were. I didn't read the dialogue. I wasn't really caring. And so it just feels like you're in this pressure test of a video game. It doesn't really feel fun anymore. And the problem is that it becomes kind of self-reinforcing because you want to have good experiences and you're like, oh, I have to get into this good guild, or I have to get this gear, or I have to complete this thing in order to enjoy it. And it's like, it's the journey is the gift, right? And that's something that I think that, young video game players just don't understand. And, I certainly didn't really understand. And it's only now that I can really appreciate those aspects of it.
Yeah, I think one of the captivating parts of WoW was that you can just stop all the rushing and fast-paced, competitive, commercially driven life that you lead at a 9-to-5 job and just log into this world that's so like slow-moving and at your own pace, because everything is
Teacher got you down.
Play
some WoW.
Everything is about how you're interacting with the world and what you're seeing and what you're doing. But now with all these like new added things and the game developers catering to a certain type of player that's focused on gear and getting the most experience and showing off your mount at the nearest capital city. Like it's giving advantage to the people who want to do that and not doing that for the people who just want to slowly explore every nook and cranny in this story. Which was really one of the biggest things, because I remember going into the world of Teldrassil as a night elf and just being like, oh my god, there's so many, like, this is huge, this is like unimaginable. It's like looking at the planet Earth. And the fact that you could even just jump and fall into the ocean and do all these things that normally there's like boundaries in a video game. Like sometimes you can't fall over a cliff in a regular game, but in WoW you can fall off of anything and you could probably die. It just seemed like such a dangerous and unknown world, and maybe it's because we know what the world is now that we're so fed up with it and all of the things that are trying to make it fresh.
And that's the other thing too that you alluded to, which is the game is too easy now. I remember playing the Warlords of Draenor, which is the last expansion that I played, and I'm like, it's too easy. Like it doesn't really feel like anything is challenging. It just feels like if you get enough gear score or a powerful weapon or choose these right set of talents, but without putting really that much thought into it anyway, and then you get with a group of people, you can like basically do whatever you want. But it didn't really feel like there was any element of challenging, or it felt like you had to be creative. The world was so much more punishing back then, and I know it's a weird thing to be nostalgic about, but everything felt like if you achieved something or you got an item, it really felt like, wow, this was difficult to achieve, and you felt so much more pride in the fact that your character had it. And again, I think it reinforced that like player identity, and it didn't really make you feel like you're just someone who's logging into like a content experience. It felt like you were someone who was being the character. That's something that I would do, is I would really strongly identify with the character, and I think about the story around my character and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of people who do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I did that.
And so you like are like, fuck, oh my god, I died, and it's like, well, my character, it's really the character, but it's you internalize it in this weird way, and I think it's partly due to the fact that it's people like you and I who've read fantasy books, and where there's such great consequence to characters experiencing tragedy or something, like we think about that in the video game context, even though you're just going to respawn at the graveyard. But
yeah, for sure, it's taking that sort of storyline and making it real.
Yeah, it's psychologically a very strange game.
And it actually brings up this other point that I read about, which was there's a school, or I think like a homeschool program, where they're using World of Warcraft to teach kids about the world, like the real world. And this kid was learning about, he was like 11 years old, and he was learning about disease and corruption, and he was talking about exponential growth and things like that, because he was like, oh, if one person's infected, then he goes into another room and they all get infected, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting part of the game where it has the real world logistics, and that's kind of what is enticing about it. But then with all these things that you don't really get in the real world, with like gear, and I guess it's kind of like accruing like luxury cars or something, but it's not something that people get like true happiness out of. I don't know, this is my opinion. It's more something that you do for other people for appearance sakes.
Yeah,
it's emulating that part of society as opposed to the society of community and learning and all the other goody things. It's kind of interesting to look at it like, was WoW always destined to be like this? Is everything supposed to be like this, where it starts out so good and then it just gets corrupted by human nature? I don't know, this is getting really philosophical.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, because we want more and more and more, and we don't really know what to do, and there's so many competing demands, like, we just end up ruining shit. But I really believe in the Schumpeterian concept of creative destruction. So hopefully out of the ashes of such a great game, an even better, more robust, more immersive, more fun and compelling and valuable experience in a game will come up. So,
and this leads right into our next question, which is
a phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah. So our next question was, so is this new robust version of WoW, is it going back to the vanilla game? Is that the answer?
I think this is the most interesting question regarding this whole series. This is something that players have wanted for a very long time. I remember there was this one forum on the WoW community site where people would actually submit suggestions to the developers directly, or presumably they would read them. Many, I suppose, did not. because many of these suggestions have not been implemented, for better or worse. There's this one thread where people were saying, allocate some of the servers to be set at a certain expansion level, or just have outright servers that are only vanilla, so you can go and have that player experience, and it's kind of like unmolested by current content. And I think
Dungeon Finder.
Yeah, oh god, I mean, like one of the worst fucking additions to the entire thing.
Let's not get into it.
I mean, I know, you set me off. It just I get like
triggered you.
I get like flashbacks, and I having traumatic experiences here with fucking Raid Finder. Oh my god, seriously? Pair with 40 other people or 20 other people, whatever the fuck, 25. And you all have different ping levels, and you expect that you're gonna down some really technical boss. Mm-hmm. God, what a horrible idea it is.
Yeah.
I played Raid Finder maybe 10, 20 times, and every time it was a disaster, and I just gave up. I said I'm never gonna do that again.
It's one of those suggestions or whatever they thought was gonna benefit the video game that really backfired, I think, because not a lot of people are really into it. Or a lot of people are voicing their displeasure continually. Yeah. Anyway, going back to...
going back to this potential point of revival for the game. Yeah, I don't know, like, if WoW Classic is going to be something that can really rejuvenate the community of WoW and the player experience. And I think the primary reason that I'm skeptical, and a lot of players are skeptical too, is we're seriously doubtful of the ability of Blizzard to effectively recreate the same experience that a lot of players had in vanilla. And that's, of course, I mean, it's just so obvious that it's not going to be the same, because it's going to be on the contemporary, it's going to have contemporary graphics, and I think a lot of the quest design is going to be revamped, and there's going to be a lot of potential carryover of current features. So that, for instance, they might still keep pet battles, but the thing is, there's also been serious overhaul in terms of the progression of players, like in leveling and stuff like that. I mean, I remember when I first started playing, you had to wait until level 40 to get like a shitty mount, and then you had to be max level to have a fast mount.
Yeah.
Which in today's World of Warcraft, like having just a fast mount, you can get. I think it's level 40 when you get your.
Probably.
I don't even remember now. Like you get mounts so quickly now, and of course now you have flying mounts, and you have flying mounts in Azeroth, which they added in Cataclysm. So the question is, what is going to remain from the current huge set of changes to the original game, and what is going to be kept? Like, is it just basically going to be contemporary World of Warcraft with a vanilla skin, and you only get to play the 4 races per faction, and you have limited class selection? I mean, for me, that wouldn't be that big of a deal, but again, it's about the feels, man, and like it's about can we have that same sense of immersion? And I just feel like they don't have the tools right now, or like maybe the willingness to actually do that. But to sum up, I think that there's a lot of hope in this new expansion, if you will. I mean, it's not, again, it's...
Respansion?
Yeah, sure. Secondary expansion. I know that my friends and I are really hopeful, because I think it'll create a ton of replay value. And as I've been implying this whole time, bring ex-players and really old players back to an experience that they had over 10 years ago at this point.
Hopefully we haven't bitten the apple and we can't put it back in the tree. Hopefully a new apple can grow back and we can observe it instead of corrupting it.
Well, hopefully an MMORPG will come out and be competent and be playable, because most of the other ones are just terrible.
Or maybe we can hope for the next Diablo.
Yeah,
and that might be better.
Diablo 4. Yeah. What do you think is more likely, like that they'll do a good job on Classic, or that Diablo 4 will come out and be good?
Honestly, Classic, because no one is keeping a radar on Diablo 4 in their point of view, I think.
Can't wait to do the Diablo podcast.
Yeah, so Morgan has begun playing Diablo as well, which is another Blizzard Entertainment game. So
different universe, but lot more dark and
Gothic.
yes,
For sure.
very, very interesting series. Lots of Christian imagery and yes.
Devil worship.
There
Our
are
favorite.
tons of devil worship and demons and evil beings.
On that note, I think we'll probably wrap up this podcast and let us know if you are interested in hearing more about our thoughts of video games in later podcasts. So we are thinking of doing ones on Elder Scroll and Diablo, as we mentioned, and Warcraft, the campaign strategy games as well. But let us know if you are interested in hearing more.
Yeah, I guess we'll totally do more.
Yeah. And I think we'll end off with this cute, powerful quote that I got from a gaming writer called Zach Story about World of Warcraft and why it's so awesome. The combat flows, it mimics life, there's a rhythm to it. And the longer you stay inside that rhythm, the smoother it becomes, the better you play. I reckon that's why 90% of the remaining community still play the game, even though they probably don't realize it. Because no other game out there can replicate anything close to how WoW feels to play.
Wow. I bet you shed a little tear after you finished.
I mean, even I'm tearing up, man. Like, damn. It's all about the feels with WoW.
Yeah, see, it's about the feels, man. Not about the money. Oh, yeah, wasn't I at some point supposed to bring up the stock performance of... yeah, we totally lost that part.
This whole thing is a mess.
Well, anyway, if you go to finance.yahoo.com, which is the worst place to look up stock information, but I prefer Webull. It's a lot more interactive and there's more utility to it. Anyway, this one is, if Yahoo in a pinch, good, but go to Webull or get Quest Trade, much better. You need an account though, but
Mr. Morgan, the finance pant.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, hit us with some stocks.
Back in 1993, we've got basically it's hovering around about $1, and by the release of World of Warcraft, we're at a couple bucks, $3-4. After 2008, we have a big peak. That was when Wrath of the Lich King was released for around $17, and around 2012, I think, or was it 2010? I can't remember. But Blizzard merged with Activision, which is obviously one of the biggest, I think the biggest video game company out there. Call of Duty franchise. I mean, that alone is basically I think their biggest IPO, and it's crazy. But since then, I mean, it's just been a relatively steady rise to now about $77 a share.
Damn.
Yeah. Now, I think that there are peaks and troughs according to seasons, but, video games are basically released every November. It seems to be the hot time for everyone to release their games and...
getting ready for Christmas.
Yeah, and it's a really good time because they can capitalize on sales and the momentum of the gift buying culture that we have in the holidays. So, but Blizzard's been doing really well, and they've expanded their range of games that they offer. It's not just Diablo, StarCraft, WoW. They've got Heroes of the Storm, and they have that other...
Hearthstone?
Yeah, they have Hearthstone, which is the card-based card-type game, and...
Yeah, they're doing good. I mean, if you were an old hat back in the 90s and you paid a buck a share, man, you must be rich now.
Yeah, you'd be doing pretty good. Yeah, if you bought several thousand shares, you'd be in really good territory to have sold. Even at the bottom of this year, you would have made off pretty well.
Oh. Well, thanks, Morgan, for the finance segment of this podcast.
We'll have to have some cheesy intro and outro,
I think it should be goblins talking about money or something.
Oh my, yeah. We'll have to put the Goblin King, his big fatso on his pile of gold, flipping coins. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, definitely have to get on that.
But on that note, I think that we've exhausted our current discussion about World of Warcraft, and I think much in line with our plans for the Lord of the Rings universe, there's so many aspects that we want to talk about. We'd like to talk about races and artifact weapons and just these little quirky things that really made the game an impressive experience overall, and something that as that very well-spoken writer there, or
Zach Story.
Yeah.
So even his last name is like,
yeah,
I'm a good writer, yo.
and as that author you quoted earlier wrote, or as that writer you quoted earlier had mentioned, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. To wrap it up. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you will suffer to come to the next podcast that we launch.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye. Okay, bye. Oh my god.